Welcome to the road to 1 million US dollars. Let's get right into the Bitcoin chart for today, starting on this 4-hour time frame for Bitcoin, where we have seen exactly what I talked about in yesterday's video play out in the charts here, because we are now seeing a bit of a retracement of this recent pump to the upside here. Now, in the case that you missed yesterday's video, we were trading at around 63.2K or so. And I was saying, hey guys, if you take a look at the 1-hour RSI for Bitcoin, which is the Bitcoin momentum indicator, at the time we were right here in this overbought area. So when we are above 70 on the RSI, we are in overbought territories, basically. Either way, I was saying likely we are going to see this RSI reset back down to around that 50 level, which we have now seen exactly play out in the charts here. In fact, we even went a little bit below it here as we are retesting this Fibonacci golden pocket sitting between 62,000 and 62.7K. So what should you be paying attention to in the charts right now? Well, as I said in yesterday's video as well, I think this Fibonacci golden pocket is going to be critical here for Bitcoin to determine what is going to happen next. Either we are going to see a bounce from this Fibonacci golden pocket, in which case we are likely to see a resumption to the upside, for example, up to this next level of resistance, sitting at 65.5K. However, if we now see a move below 62,000 US dollars in the Bitcoin price, then in my personal opinion, we are likely to see a move further to the downside, for example, down to this next big level of support, which is the 0.5 Fibonacci level sitting at 59.5K. One other factor that I am taking a look at here is actually the 4-hour RSI, which also reached into overbought territories here. And again, usually when you reach into overbought territory, you will likely see the RSI reset back down to around that 50 level. Right now, we are starting to move into a weekend here. And usually during a weekend, you don't really see a lot of volatility in the charts unless there is a major news event that plays out. However, I think the ideal scenario is basically that we chop around on this Fibonacci golden pocket here during the course of the weekend, because in that case, the RSI will also be reset by the time the new trading week starts, because if you're not familiar with how the RSI actually resets, it can do this with some choppy sideways price action, in which case the RSI will reset down somewhat slowly. Or if you get some bearish price action, then the RSI will reset down more quickly. And again, as I said yesterday as well, can even go below that 50 level, because whenever we are below 50 on the RSI, it means that we are seeing a downtrend on that specific time frame that we are taking a look at. But either way, since we are going into this weekend, I think it is very likely that we will continue to see this RSI reset down to at least around this 50 level here. Now, there's also another way of looking at the Fibonacci levels. If you take this wick high to this wick low here, then you can see that we are already well above this Fibonacci golden pocket. And right now we actually broke out above the 0.786 Fibonacci level and are now basically retesting this 786 level, sitting at about 62.3K. So this is another way of looking at the charts. And therefore I would say if you just use this one right here, then you could say, well, if we lose 62K, then likely we are going to see more bearish momentum, because we would also be losing this level of support here. Zooming out to the bigger support and resistance levels for Bitcoin, recently here we saw a perfect rejection from this recent high sitting at about 64.2K, as I talked about in my recent videos here. So we got a bit of a rejection back down, and as I said before this even happened, likely if we get a rejection from this level of resistance, then we will likely be falling into this next big level of potential support below it, sitting from about 62.4K all the way down to 60,000 US dollars. And why do I say potential support? Well, if you take a look at it from the smaller time frames here, you will see that after we broke out above, we have not really seen a strong bounce from this level. So therefore, we cannot really consider it as a level of support, because again, we haven't seen support being held here after breaking out above it. Now, the reason I'm a bit cautious here is because recently we saw a move above right here. And then again, I had this marked in white saying like, hey, we haven't confirmed it as a level of support. And right after that, we fell straight through this, touching right into this next big level of support below that. But as I said, during the weekend, I think it is more likely that we are just going to chop around in this range here. And then potentially, if we now see a bounce in the following week, well, in that case, then I would be marking this in blue once again. Now, if we actually zoom out from these lower time frames here, we take a look at the 1 day time frame, what you will see is that we still have this CME gap here at about 53,000 US dollars for the Bitcoin price. Now, in the case that you are not familiar, over 90% of CME gaps actually get filled, meaning that the price will trade back to this level or somewhere around this level here at some point. However, this can actually take a bit of time, as I said many times on the channel previously, because, for example, right here, we also had a CME gap, as you can see, but the price first moved up about 14% to the upside before we actually turned around and then eventually filled that CME gap. So for now, I am expecting that at some point, we are going to fill this CME gap because the probability simply favors it, because trading is all about probabilities. Although at the same time, be careful trying to short down to a CME gap like this and wait for an actual reversal before you start looking for those short positions down to that CME gap. Obviously, I'm not talking about much lower time frames. You can take long and short positions all you want, but I'm just saying if you're trying to short down to the CME gap, wait for a real reversal signal. Otherwise, you're probably going to get wrecked. But that is not financial advice. I'm simply telling you what I see in the charts, and you can do with that information what you like. Now, what would actually change my mind about this CME gap filling at some point? Well, it would be if we see a breakout above this descending channel. So if you look here, Bitcoin has been consolidating in this descending channel for months at this point. And if we would now see a strong breakout above here, then I would say the odds of us filling the CME gap down here would severely decrease. But I don't really want to speculate on that for now because it is simply way too early to start talking about a breakout of this descending channel because as you have seen here many times on the channel, if you've been a long time subscriber, every single time we came to these peaks, everyone was like turbo bullish, and it felt like I was one of the last people that had some common sense and just saying like, hey, be cautious here around these highs, wait for a real confirmation of a breakout. And everyone was already celebrating and like talking about nice cars and everything. Like we're going to be super rich. And every single time at the top here, I was saying, guys, just wait a couple days. If this is going to be the real breakout to like 100K or whatever people are talking about, then taking the long position here after you have a confirmed breakout at 69K is just as good as taking that long position at 68K before the breakout. You know what I mean? So therefore, I would say the same thing right now. If you see people really talking about much higher price action for Bitcoin right now, just be a little bit cautious because so long as we are trading inside this descending channel, we can simply go to the top of the range, which is currently sitting at about 66K, roughly speaking. And we can go to the bottom of the range as well, which is sitting at 50K right now. And no, this isn't me just saying it can go up and it's going to go down, but I'm basically explaining that in a consolidation pattern like this is basically the range that Bitcoin will be trading in unless it invalidates, unless it really breaks either to the upside or to the downside. And so long as that doesn't happen, then Bitcoin will just continue to do this and it can keep doing this for months, you know? So that is just something to keep in mind as well. Now let's take a look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map. First of all, on this 1 week time frame, right now you can see that there's quite a bit of liquidity to the downside at 57.2K, and there is still some liquidity to the upside at 64.2K as well. Now, in the case that you are not familiar with this chart, typically the Bitcoin price gets attracted to where there is the most liquidity on this chart. And previously, as you can see by these big yellow areas here, the liquidity was to the upside. But right now we are seeing a bit of a division where there is some liquidity to the upside and some liquidity to the downside. And when you have a situation like this where there's liquidity on both sides, it means that the market is likely to just keep trading sideways. If you, for example, zoom into the 24-hour time frame, you will see that we just took out a big level of liquidity to the downside. And usually, for example, during a weekend, you will see Bitcoin do something like this, where we take out a bunch of liquidity to the downside, reverse, take out liquidity to the upside, reverse, take out liquidity to the downside once again. And this is simply what we call choppy sideways price action, where Bitcoin is just grabbing liquidity on both sides over and over again. So that is something to be careful with over the weekend, but it is also something that you can use to your advantage if you know how to use these Bitcoin liquidation heat maps. Now, if you want to learn more about how to use these heat maps, for example, or just how I do all my technical analysis in general, I left a link in the video description of the video that you're watching right now, and it links to my free trading course, where I literally have an hour of video content that you can watch completely for free, where I explain everything about technical analysis on a beginner level. So even if you are a beginner or even an intermediate level trader, this could be interesting for you. And yeah, I highly recommend you go check it out. And as I said, it is completely free as well. Either way, if you do end up checking it out or not, this has been today's market update. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I will see you tomorrow in the next one.